Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? I'm your host, Bad Guy Ibra, aka Ibrahim. I'm your favorite Gambian. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate James Toon invited me on his show, ladies and gentlemen, to uncover or break down UFC 271 between Israel Adesanya, the last style bender, and obviously the former UFC middleweight champion in Robert Whittaker. James, my friend, mate, how are you doing today?
Well, I am doing absolutely fine. Thank you very much, especially after that beautiful performance last night. But that's enough of the football, enough talking about that, because as you touched on there is one main reason why we are all here, because this weekend, the last style bender, Israel Adesanya, is going to be taking on Robert Whittaker again on the rematch. First of all, I guess there's no better place to start than with the original fight. What did you think about that one?
The original fight, which took place in Melbourne, Australia, by the way, this was one of the biggest events in UFC history. I mean, you could probably compare it to the one in which Ronda Rousey fought Holly Holmes, mate. But honestly, the crowd in the Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, the Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, Australia, honestly, was incredible. And Adesanya went into the fight very confident, incredibly confident, and he managed to get the KO. You know what I mean? No one expected it. It was doubted by the vast majority of the MMA community, because most people thought that he couldn't do it, but he turned in and just got the knockout victory. Honestly, incredible. But the question is, could he do it again? That's the question, James. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, looking at the first fight, you say he came in as the underdog. You say nobody expected it. I tell you what nobody expected was the way that the fight went. That was an absolute whitewash, in my opinion. That was an absolute masterclass by Adesanya. I mean, the things for me that really stand out for him is his balance and his agility. I mean, the way when he throws those leg kicks, the way he manages to keep perfect balance and never seems to fall over. And he actually really reminds me of course, my mind has gone blank. Anderson Silva. How can I forget that? He reminds me so much of that kind of cat-like agility. And I don't know if you remember Silva's knockout, one of his most famous knockouts against Forrest, where he enters the Matrix and he's walking backwards, ducking shots, and then hits him as he's leaning back. It's kind of a similar of knockout here. He's kind of leaning back against Whittaker in the first fight. He's leaning back, like taking a couple shots, just missing them, and then slaps him with the left hook as he's going back and knocks him out. It really reminded me of him. And obviously the way he fights, especially with the leg kicks and stuff, is quite similar.
Yeah, he had mentioned, that's a great point, honestly. You remind me that the fact that he's mentioned, they actually talked about Anderson Silva, being his idol, essentially, someone he's looked up to. And when he fought Anderson Silva back in 2019, I mean, it was a sensational fight. It was a great fight, honestly. Adesanya had said, I mean, he showed so much respect to Silva, and his style, let's be honest, does emulate Anderson Silva's style. Don't you think so?
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially with the leg kicks, like I was saying. I mean, that I'd say, I don't know about you, but that seems to be his biggest asset.
Yeah, so this then begs the question. I'm going to ask you this, right? Because obviously it's almost like, an undisputed fact that Anderson Silva is the greatest middleweight champion of all middleweight of all time, right?
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, essentially, is Adesanya better? Do you reckon Adesanya could walk his way up into creating a GOAT status for himself? What do you think?
Well, it's funny you mentioned this. I was actually watching a Chael Sonnen piece on it the other day, where he was talking about, some guy was saying, Anderson Silva's the GOAT. There's no debate about it. He was over the hill. I mean, he was 42, I believe, when he fought Adesanya the first time. Oh, he's over the hill. He's done. There's no way, until maybe future results he could get there. But then he was kind of saying, well, look, he beat him. Therefore, that has to have some sort of stock in it, no matter how old he was. I mean, I'm not so sure about it, because I think especially in combat sports, once you get a lot older, you lose a hell of it. Especially the way Anderson Silva fights. He relied so heavily on his reflexes and his agility, and that kind of stuff falls very, very quickly. I think he's got a long way to go. But what I do think he does have is the swagger. I think the reason why people would declare Anderson Silva the GOAT is not necessarily because of... I mean, yes, he had the record amount of championship defenses. Yes, he was slaying everybody. Some of those people weren't of extremely high caliber. Some were. Obviously, the game's evolved. The people that people are fighting now are of a lot higher skill set than the people Anderson Silva are generally fighting. But it was the swagger of the way he did it. The class.
It was just
He
the
just
class,
did it with
mate.
sauce.
The confidence.
And Adesanya has that. Like, he knocks someone out and he starts breakdancing on the stage. He's doing the Michael Jackson moonwalking in the fight. So I think he could be on his way to it. What about you?
Could be, honestly. I think it's going to be hard, though, to be honest, because Anderson Silva, I mean, you got to remember, the guy had been around in the UFC for a while. Oh, well, he's retired now, but when he won the title, he did back in 2006, right? So that was from 2006 to when he lost it in 2013, right? There's a huge gap. So about 7 years, right? And within that 7 year gap, honestly, mate, he's done incredible things, dude. Defended the title twice against Chael Sonnen, knocked out Forrest Griffin, knocked out Stephan Bonner, knocked out Vitor Belfort, dude. Just the list just goes on. Like, you know what I mean? So I think it's possible that Adesanya can maybe establish himself as a UFC middleweight. But in my opinion, if you compare Israel Adesanya to someone like Anderson Silva, maybe personality-wise, Anderson Silva is a little bit reserved, but I think that when it comes to the greatest of all time, with regards to accomplishment, I think Anderson Silva, no one can beat him, mate.
Yeah,
no one can beat him.
It depends
No one.
on the longevity, doesn't it? Because would you say that
Adesanya's
the people have got
29,
better?
30 years old.
But would you say
What's that?
people that... Yeah, exactly, but Silva was fighting up until he was 40, so there's still time. But would you say generally the people that Adesanya would be coming up against now are of a higher quality than a lot of the people that...
totally. Yeah, totally, 100%. I think people have definitely gotten better now than back in the day, because you got to remember, people were slightly exploring with MMA. You know what I mean? It was almost a new concept. People are coming from different backgrounds, like Muay Thai. Some people are coming from boxing, and what the goal was essentially to merge them all together into this one thing called mixed martial arts. So it's fairly new at the time, but now we have a concept or a grasp of what it really is. You know what I mean? So people are getting better. Definitely, people are wrestlers. You know, wrestlers who have good striking, strikers who have good wrestling. So yeah, definitely, I would say fighters now are a lot better than fighters back when Anderson Silva was middleweight champion. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think though that kind of goes to say that if Adesanya does carry on going on a tear, then he could potentially beat that. But I'd say in the middleweight division, there doesn't seem to be too many standout guys that are really gonna help put him in the limelight to achieve that GOAT status. I think if there is one person that is going to achieve that is going to rival Anderson Silva, I think there is someone currently fighting that could do that. And I think you know exactly who I'm talking about. And I'll give you...
Stylebender.
No. Very...
In the middleweight division?
No. Just in the UFC in general. Someone...
In general... Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian Nightmare.
Kamaru
Absolutely
Usman.
sensational.
I think he could rival Anderson Silva. I don't know about you.
I mean, I think it's possible, mate. He's been knocking people out left, right, and centre. And you know what's amazing about Anderson Silva, the native of Curitiba, Brazil, was the fact that he actually knocks people out, unlike GSP, who is largely dominant in his performances against his opponents. But GSP always tends to go to decision. Anderson Silva finishes people. Kamaru Usman largely finishes people. Do you know what I mean? So that's the advantage that he has, because no one can turn around when he retires, like undefeated. Well, he's only been defeated once in the UFC. No one can turn around and say that his fights were boring. You know what I mean? I mean, he's knocking people out. So definitely, I think you're right about that. Totally 100% correct. I think the Nigerian Nightmare is definitely closest into matching Anderson Silva. Obviously, John Jones as well, but he's been away for a while. But anyways, what do you think Whittaker's chances are in beating Adesanya in the second fight?
Well, actually, you stole the question right off my lips there. Of course, he's someone who kind of changed the style a bit, you know, since the first defeat. He's obviously built his way back up. What can you tell me personally about his past few performances?
Okay, mate, honestly, that's a really good question. I really appreciate it. Honestly, I've been waiting for such a well-structured,
I was waiting to set you up for that one. I can see.
Journalistic question. Yeah, honestly, Robert Whittaker. You know what I rate about Whittaker is his determination. His determination to learn. His determination to work on his grappling. Because we knew that he was a decent wrestler, but his wrestling wasn't at the level where he could cause Adesanya a lot of trouble. What did he do? After the loss against Adesanya, worked on his wrestling, and most importantly, and most precisely, worked on his striking, dude. I'm talking about striking. His boxing is flawless, and I think he's very vulnerable. The only problem I'm going to say is that Whittaker is very vulnerable to leg kicks. We saw it in his fight against Jared Cannonier, and before that, his fight against Darren Till. Do you know what I mean? But his hands are really good. He's worked really well on his boxing. So that determination, that level of determination, and obviously a 3-fight winning streak as well. One against Darren Till, one against Jared Cannonier, and a recent one against Kelvin Gastelum. All these people are contenders. So being able to beat these people definitely puts him in a position where he actually can claim that he deserves a title shot. So definitely, I think all these new changes altogether makes him the perfect opponent in the middleweight division for Adesanya at this moment. Although there's competition in the middleweight division, but Adesanya is beating a lot of them anyways, you know what I mean? And I think Robert Whittaker at this moment in time is the right guy. So definitely, yeah.
Well, I think the Kelvin Gastelum one that you touched on, I think that was the big one. I think, after getting the decision victory over Gastelum, I think that was the one that really stamped it. He showed his skill set, he showed all the improvements he's made, but coming into this next fight, will those improvements be enough? And I think there is one area that I haven't seen really mentioned so much. We've seen it in boxing a lot. I mean, Roy Jones Jr., one of the greatest boxers of all times, he moved up a weight division.
Amen.
And then he tried to move back down, and he was never the same. Tony Bellew himself, he said, the biggest mistake I ever made was going up to heavyweight and then trying to go back down to cruiserweight to fight Usyk, because once I've gone up a weight division and then I tried to go back down a weight division, things seem to, you never seem to regain that sharpness. Of course, Adesanya went up to light heavyweight to fight Jan Blachowicz, ended up getting mauled in that fight. Do you think that is going to have any effect on him coming down, or the longevity of his career dropping back down the weight division?
No, and I'm going to tell you why. So Adesanya, when he went up to the light heavyweight division to challenge the Polish power in Jan Blachowicz, he lost that fight, but he actually came back to the middleweight division and fought Marvin Vettori and won that fight. You know what I mean? So it's not that his last fight was against Jan Blachowicz and he lost. He actually won his last fight against Vettori after he lost to Jan Blachowicz. So clearly I don't think his performance had been impacted in any way, shape or form. But I can totally understand what you mean, because there's obviously a lot of evidence of people just totally failing when they go up. Might have done bad, but try to go back down, and they think it's going to work out for them, but it just fails completely. As you've mentioned, the likes of Roy Jones Jr. and Tony Bellew, I totally understand that, but the Stylebender is a natural middleweight. He just gave himself a challenge to go up at 205 pounds. He did, just like most great fighters would do. I mean, if you want to cement your legacy as one of the greatest pound-for-pound mixed martial artists of all time, you're going to have to do things that people don't often see, going up weight classes above your own weight class, obviously, which not many people have done, to be honest. But Adesanya is one of them, and unfortunately, he's lost. But I mean,
who was the first UFC fighter to successfully do
that? Conor McGregor.
Oh, that guy.
That fucking guy, mate. The Irish, man.
The Irish are back.
Yeah.
No. Obviously, yeah, he did get the decision victory over Vettori. It's just an interesting point to look at, whether that will affect the longevity of his career going up and down the weights. And of course, he has come under a lot of recent speculation that he is in fact using substances. Now, I'm not one that necessarily agrees with this. Of course, there was the picture of his nipple protruding a little bit, which is meant to be a telltale sign of performance enhancing steroids. Do you think that he is someone who has been using these kind of substances? Think there's any logic?
Again, again, there's always probably a logic to most arguments, to be honest, especially in relation to doping in sport, because there was someone that came out actually, and I watched this video. I can't remember precisely what video it was, but there's this guy who I think he works for USADA, or had worked for USADA, so that's the United States Anti-Doping Agency, and he said that, like, honestly, a lot of fighters, a lot of sport figures or athletes, regardless of what the sport is, including fighters as well, he would go as far as about 70% of these people might be on these substances. So, essentially banned substances, that was to give themselves advantages competitively. So I don't know if Adesanya himself is on it, but a lot of fighters are.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
Every athlete, every sport is a competition where you win or you lose, and the stakes are massive. And when the stakes of competition are that big, people will look for any kind of route to get any kind of competitive advantage they can. So pretty much all professional sports will have a performance enhancing, a steroid problem, no matter what sports they say. Like, you don't hear a lot of it in football.
Yeah.
You don't hear a lot about it in football, but I can tell you for a fact there are definitely players playing in top leagues, in top divisions, in top sides that are using some sort of stuff and because they have such high level doctors with them, they can use stuff that's undetectable by new regulations and stuff. So hey, anything's possible. Like you say, he doesn't necessarily strike me physique wise as someone that does. Of course, that nipple thing was kind of weird, and I know that steroids can be used for a multiple amount of things. It's not necessarily just for muscle mass or growth like that. It can be used for endurance, stamina. I mean, we saw TJ Dillashaw using it. Wait, was TJ Dillashaw? I don't want to get this wrong. Allegedly,
EPO.
Yes. Yeah.
TJ Dillashaw, yeah, former bantamweight champion.
Yeah, he was using that, and that was like to increase like his stamina, allowed him to train so much harder, get so much more endurance in. But yeah, look, like I say, it's a funny old debate, that thing. Of course, no one will know, but he doesn't really strike me as someone that would be using those kind of things, because especially then, I think he would have stood a bit more of a chance against Blachowicz, who, like you say, just really mauled him. Like the physicality was just a massive difference.
Yeah, there's a huge difference physically, obviously, and but again, he tried his best, went up, and I think he was the second person to attempt, obviously, 2 titles and fail. One of them was TJ Dillashaw before he got caught out of obviously taking performance enhancing drugs, right, and got banned for 2 years in 2019. It was him, and then obviously Adesanya also lost as well, going up fighting against Jan Blachowicz. But before them, all the people who had fought initially for, for the titles, obviously 2 titles, all of them actually won it. McGregor was the first person, and then you had Daniel Cormier and Amanda Nunes, and Henry Cejudo as well. Yeah. Incredible, honestly. But yeah, I think so. What do you think are Whittaker's chances of beating Adesanya? So where do you think his chances are going to come from? Is it going to be his grappling, his striking? What do you reckon?
Well, it's a ground game, isn't it? I think on the feet. I think on the feet, I really rate Adesanya's chances. If you're talking on the feet combat, I think his skill set, his ability, I think it supersedes Whittaker big time. I think, especially like we were saying, with his kickboxing background, Adesanya, and the leg kicks he can get. Because let me tell you something, man. Forget the fists. If you're good enough with your legs and your feet, that range difference is just amazing. And his reach, I think on the feet, I know that Whittaker's improved a lot of his game, and like I said, I was listening to a piece the other day, and then Sonnen was breaking it down, and he was saying, look, if you compare the two, Adesanya's game hasn't changed as much compared to Whittaker, who his game's evolved a hell of a lot since then. But still, man, I think it all depends on his ability to get him down, to get Adesanya down, get him wrestling, get him grappling, and then maybe I think he has a chance. If he stays on the feet, I think Adesanya's got this all day long, and I think he's going to knock him out. I think he's got a point to prove. I think he's got a vengeance. I think he really doesn't like Whittaker, and I think he's going to finish him early. I think he's going to go in there round 2, question mark kick to the face, follow it up with a left straight, and finish the job. That's what I think. Round 2 knockout, Israel Adesanya.
Right. That's his prediction, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard it. And if that prediction becomes true, right, Adesanya, what he's, well, from that perspective, what he's done is, beating, defended his title, obviously after defeating Robert Whittaker. This would be his probably 4th title defense, right? So I'm thinking he defended his title against Paulo Costa, Marvin Vettori, Yoel Romero. So it's going to be his 4th title defense. I mean, we could have a conversation about him, maybe not being the greatest middleweight of all time, but, at least better than everyone else that came before him, obviously, excluding Anderson Silva. What do you think about that?
Well, look, yeah. And again, I mean, I hate to touch it on again. There was a debate going on a month ago about who is...
Honestly, I can't hear you.
About...
I think you...
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, basically, well, yeah. I hate to go back to it, but there's a debate I was listening to. Dominic Cruz was actually spearheading it about... hang on a second, my light is just being really annoying. Sorry about that. But yeah, Dominic Cruz was spearheading this debate, and it's about who is the greatest of all time. Is the greatest of all time necessarily based on performance, or is it based on popularity? And his argument was... based on popularity. It's not just based on performance. Their judgments are clouded. I mean, you look at Muhammad Ali, who's declared the greatest in the sport, and someone who maybe you could say there were fighters before him, like Joe Louis, who arguably had a greater record or thing, but because what he did outside the sport,
someone like Rocky Marciano or Jack Dempsey.
Yeah, but because he superseded him with what he did outside the ring, people will go for him. And Adesanya, he's entertaining. Like we were saying with the Anderson Silva thing, with the swagger of the things he did. He looked like he was... Like, when he'd beat someone, he'd humiliate some of these people with the things he... I mean, he was recreating things out of movies. He was recreating Karate Kid, the Daniel LaRusso crane kick to the face. He was recreating The Matrix. He was doing all this kind of stuff. And Adesanya, like you say, I think he possesses those same qualities that I think when he has a fight, people want to watch. Because not only is... I mean, we were talking about the entertainment in the build-up with, whatchamacallem, Masvidal and Colby Covington. I mean, Adesanya brings that as well. He's charismatic on the mic. He's very enigmatic. He gets people interested in what he's going to do. And when he's in there, he does it with a freedom, with a style, with a flair. The way he moves, it's unorthodox. It gets you wanting to watch. This guy's breakdancing, shooting machine guns everywhere after he knocks someone out. You're like, damn, all right, this guy's a fucking killer. This guy's cool. So I think, if he does continue to beat people, I think people will take a lot of notice on him because he gets people wanting to watch him. And I think that has a massive factor in someone being declared the GOAT or someone being declared the best middleweight. So yes, I think if he does continue to defend his title in this manner, then absolutely he is well in that conversation. But I want to get your prediction for the fight before we finish up here. Who's going to win? How's it going to happen? What time? What day? What kick? What punch? What grapple? What submission? What is happening?
All right. Again, as I've mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, this guy is a proper journalist. He's definitely going to make it, mate. He's asking questions that I am thinking and anticipating for him to ask. And he's thinking and asking these questions. Obviously, I don't want to swear. I don't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want to say it because I want to keep my YouTube channel PG. And but anyways, he's a very, fucking intelligent guy, honestly.
One F word out there. That was,
Oh, did you? I'm going to bleep it, though. I can do that.
All right, well,
so, yeah, honestly, Yeah, go on.
No.
Yeah. My prediction for this fight is, I think Whittaker's going to go slightly longer in this particular fight than he did in the previous fight. He's going to obviously take cautious measures cautious measures. He's going to be slightly more careful and less reckless than he did in the previous fight, right? So I still think Adesanya might get the finish, or more likely we will get the finish around, the third, fourth round, and it's going to be a TKO. That's what I see coming. He's going to obviously start with, low calf kicks, those Benson Henderson style calf kicks, and he's gonna, soften him up a little bit, just break him down a little bit. And as the fight progresses, he's definitely gonna take advantage of Robert Whittaker's slow movement, and then he's gonna work on his mixed martial arts, just mix things together. And from that, I definitely think Adesanya is gonna get a TKO victory, guaranteed. But my prediction is round 4.
Round 4. I think it's going to be a late one.
Yeah.
Wear him down.
Yeah.
Paint the toes, kick him in the face, and send him to space, as he said.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. And we might see some memes after that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, what we can be rest assured with is that this is going to be one that you do not want to miss. Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker, the rematch that we've all been waiting for. Can Adesanya go on a tear? Can he continue his strong legacy and potentially build his way up to rivaling Anderson Silva as the middleweight GOAT? This is all going to be figured out on Saturday this weekend. You better be there. Don't be square. Get your ass down there and watch him.
Let's
kick him
go,
in the face
boys.
and send
Let's
him to
go.
Space.
And I've got one more question for you, right, James? So in sports in general, not just mixed martial arts or boxing or anything in general, we talk about the it factor, right? Have you heard of the it factor, right? So it's this thing, whether you have it or not, right? So do you think Adesanya has what is known as the it factor?
Yes, because as we were talking about before, the it factor, if you're talking just skill set in the ring,
Yeah.
he's shown he has the it factor because he can pull
It
out
factor, yeah.
crazy things at crazy moments, like things people wouldn't expect. Especially with his head kicking abilities, with the question mark. I mean, he basically popularized the question mark. I know the question mark kick was going around before, but he popularized the question mark kick when he was on his way into the UFC in the first place. The things he can do in the ring, I mean, shown by his numerous title defenses. Of course, he has the it factor there. And what I think the it factor really depends on is, like we were saying before, out of the ring. Because you look at someone like McGregor, yes, he had the it factor in the ring, but he had the it factor out the ring. That's what builds someone's legacy.
Yeah.
And he has both. He has both. He's magnanimous, he's respectful, but he's also goddamn entertaining, both inside and outside the ring. And he has that special defining quality that when you watch him, when you watch his movements, they're very distinct to him. You wouldn't confuse that with someone else. Like a lot of fighters, you see them, they just have a regular orthodox style. You could paint anyone's face in there and it could be anyone. But you look at Adesanya, he's one of those few people, he has distinct movements. Like you could black out his face and you could just see his movements. You'd be like, that's Adesanya. You see what he's doing outside of the ring, where he's doing triple backflips on his way to the ring. You're like, okay, that's goddamn Israel Adesanya. So
Adesanya. So just stuff that make him unique from other fighters.
Yeah, which is the it factor, and he most definitely has.
Yeah,
it.
exactly.